Happy Monday, my friend. Welcome, everybody, to Coffee Talk. We are brought to you by the Regold Company, and whether you're watching us live or on demand, we are focused on quality dance education as well as a passion for using dance education to make the best citizens possible. Thank you for joining us. Laura, how are you today?
I'm good, Ree. How are you today?
I'm in the mood for this coffee talk this morning. How
Same.
about you?
I'm excited for it. I feel like this is a topic that maybe not all studios and teachers bring to their students all of the time, this information. I think it's really important.
Yeah. So, as our guests know, or as our viewers know, we have Jackie Sleight. We have who is our three people, Debbie D and Ray Leeper, with us, and all industry leaders now. I want to know who inspired them. Who set the pathway for them to dance down to become who they are. Who did that for you, just out of curiosity?
I think I'm very lucky. I was always blessed with really good teachers. I think my first one was Miss Paula Minacci, who is very big in the Philadelphia dance scene. Was the, I guess, artistic director of the dance studio I went to growing up. And she just, I think, molded my brain to think of dance as an art and how to create. And she really gave me a lot of opportunities to choreograph when I was younger. She took me under her wing with teaching the littles. And I was actually thinking about this yesterday because I thought you were going to ask me this. That's where we're at now, Ree, however many years in. And I thought to myself, why Paula? And I said, she taught me how to teach young dancers to fall in love with dance. And I feel like that is something that has helped me become a good teacher. Those little ones on Saturday morning, they love dance, and I feel like that's something that as a teacher, you want to be able to do that for them. You want them to fall in love with dance. And then I had teachers in college who are amazing. Kun Young was actually Dance with Martha Graham, and he was my first ever modern teacher who taught Graham to me. And I never had Graham growing up, and he just opened up this whole different world of modern dance. And he really helped me when I had an injury in college. And he's another one who said, when I had to drop all these classes when I was injured, and he said, you stay and observe how I teach. And I had a whole semester where I would just watch him teach, and I had to write process papers on how he created his curriculum and how he, said the same thing 5 different ways. So those were probably my 2 most prominent teachers that kind of popped into my head right away. But I was very, very lucky. My studio owner was very particular with who she brought into her doors, very particular. And she did a really good job at putting great professional teachers in front of us, for sure. How about you? Who was your
Well, wait, I want to go back and then I'll tell you.
Yeah.
What you don't know is that injury was probably something really good to have happened to you.
Oh, 100%.
And that most dancers might not have taken on watch me teach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you also have to say, wow, you had to be pretty right-minded at the time and accept and take that, and you're utilizing it now.
Yeah. And I mean, I know how, and he's still teaching to this day. He retired from Temple University, which is where I went, but he's incredible. He has a professional dance company brought down from New York, and now it's in Philly, but he just was incredible. There's no, so professional, so knowledgeable. And the way he taught, I just had to I don't know. I can't even put into words here. I just got so many tools to put into my toolkit to then later take on to Leeper Dance Studio for my older pre-professional dancers for sure.
Really cool. Teachers impact us in different ways. They may be dance people, but it's not always only the dance part that we gain from great teachers. So for me, I know everybody knows it was my mom.
Yeah.
But if you ask what my mom's secret recipe was, it's about what we're going to talk about today. When I was 10, 11, 12, and I have Rennie as my twin brother, my mother started taking us everywhere. Like I took from Luigi, I took from Gus Giordano, I took from David Howard. My mother started just like exposing us to all of these people at such a young age that, yes, she molded us, she built a technical base. But my mother she'd say after the class, she'd go up to Luigi and say, give my boy some encouraging words, like my mother worked on making sure, I don't know, that we were comfortable in dance, I think.
And I think it's interesting that a lot of people you just listed were male professional dancers, because I'm sure, I assume in the world that you were in, there was a lot of women around. So good for her for being that teacher and putting that hat on, being like, hey, here are my male students. Talk to them about this. Tell them, because I'm sure that wasn't necessarily a part of your day to day, having male teachers,
No, it wasn't a part of our day. And frankly, as we were growing up, pretty much Rennie and I were the only guys in the dance studio. Now, my brother runs the studio 60 years later, lots of guys.
Yeah.
But it's a different world.
Right.
I am a guy who totally believes in honoring those who paved the way for all of us. I'm so excited to do this coffee talk. We are going to be back right after this with some great guests and talk more about this subject. See you in a minute. Hello, you guys.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Debbie D, Ray Leeper, Jackie Sleight on a Monday morning.
Some East Coast, some West Coast time. So thank you for the West Coasters.
Of West, as I said that, I realized. Thank you for being with
Yeah,
us.
it is morning over here.
Yeah,
It is.
morning.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm honored to have you and all three of you at the same time. I'm going to be honest with the viewers. I sat in a parking lot before going upstairs with Debbie D at Artstone's memorial service, and we were talking about TAP, New York, history, the people who came before us. And she was so filled with knowledge that I go, okay, one day I'm going to gather together some really famous people and we're going to talk about those that came before us and how they inspired the legends of today. So, Debbie, you inspired that conversation. Before we go to the legends, because this is important for me, can I ask you one at a time? And I think I know everyone's story, but I want our audience to know. What inspired you to walk into a classroom the first time? Who was that first teacher? Debbie.
My first teacher was a vaudevillian hoofer, and his name was Curly Fisher, and in Rochester, New York. And I was about 5.5 years old. I was a little clumsy, so my parents thought it would be a good idea to put me into a dance class. And I heard tapping, and I said, that's where I want to go. He taught in his garage, in his little home, and it was always in tap from the time I was 5.5 until about 13, 14. It was one-on-one. I never knew that you could take a class in tap. It was always just one-on-one. And I knew that there were classes in other fields because I was taking ballet at the time. But tap, I thought, oh, you're supposed to do this one-on-one. And he didn't know the names of any of the steps. He didn't know that there were counts. And I cried from 5.5 to about 6.5 because he scared me, because he was very loud. And he finally said to my mother, you're making her cry through the class. And he said, well, he said, she's very, very good. He says, and I want to bring that out in her. So my mother looked at me and she said, stop crying. And I did. And that's all they had to tell me. She said, you love to tap.
You know that doesn't work anymore.
I'm like, if it was only that easy now.
Yeah. And she goes, why are you crying? I said, because he's loud. And she goes, well, get over it. And I did. And the foundation that this man gave me, even though he didn't know the counts, the terminology, the foundation was remarkable. And to me, he stays in my heart every single day.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I love that story because, when you say something like he didn't know the names of the steps or something, not everybody admit that their teacher didn't know that and like be proud of it anyway. Look at the base he gave you without knowing the names
Absolutely.
of the steps.
Absolutely. And he saw in me something, and he saw that I could do everything so easy on the right side, but I was a klutz on the left. So he just said, let me teach you everything on the left foot first. And to this day, I still copy that when I'm teaching some of my classes and seeing students that are having problems. I'll teach the left side first and transfer it then over to the right. He was so unique in his way. And the studio was just about as unique, with his dogs walking around. He had thousands of records just thrown all over. It was just an interesting time.
I want to go to Ray next, but I just want to say something. Debbie, did you ever go to Stanley Brown's studio in Boston?
No, I never did. But the name is there.
Okay, he lived like you just described. He lived in the back of the studio on Mass Ave in Boston. It was quite a cats, dogs, dinner, dance. Ray, how about you? What introed you into all of this? Who?
Oh my gosh. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I'm so honored to be here, Jackie. It's so good to see you. It's good to see everybody. It's been so long. Gosh, okay. So my story, I started dancing when I was about 9 years old. I was cast in, this was elementary school. So if you can imagine my being in 5th grade and being cast as the Artful Dodger in Oliver, the musical.
I could see that.
Very, very serious musical theater program at the public, the public school. But the teacher who would run that program had, background in musical theater, as I look back now and remembering that experience. And she would hire a choreographer in. And so I don't know, I got the moves really, really quickly. And my mom came to watch the show. And this choreographer who choreographed the 5th graders in Oliver walked to my mom and said, "You need to get this kid into dance class." And so she didn't hesitate. And I was very, very lucky to go to a reputable studio. Had to travel to go to that studio for sure. I grew up in LA County and went to a studio in Orange County. And my teacher back then was the teacher. This was back in the day when everyone taught every style and every discipline, right? Remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
So she taught, she was my jazz teacher, my modern teacher, and my ballet teacher. And she was amazing. She taught me how to teach for sure. And was very descriptive in the way she taught. And I was growing up, I didn't realize this until years later, that she was really the one who taught me how to teach dancers. And that's how I found my love for teaching. And I always imagined I wanted to be her and be the type of teacher that she was. And then as I got older, probably 15, 16 years old, and it's so great that Jackie's here because I started training, we at Morrow Landis, where Joe Tremaine taught and Jackie taught and Doug Caldwell taught. And back then when you were training at the studio, you weren't getting as much choreographic material in class. It was very intensive in the technique and how to execute. And then you would go and take from Jackie or Joe, and these combinations were so long. It was like, what is happening? I was having a hard time picking up and the whole thing. And that transition into the pre-professional world for me was Jackie and Joe and Doug Caldwell. And and it was, the LA style, but still rooted in technique. And although I wasn't quite ready for it at the time, as far as learning so much content in a class, it really trained me to, different styles. And it was great for the next level for me. And then, of course, I think I told you, Ree, that Jackie, you probably don't even remember this, but Jackie and I used to teach for Joe on the convention. And I taught this guest class at Joe's studio. It was the Jackie Sleight Dance Center. And I think it was every other Tuesday or something, there would be a special class. You could go and you could teach a free class. And of course, my class was up against Barry Lather at the time, who was the hottest choreographer in the industry. So I invited all my friends to come take my class, and Jackie watched my class. A week later, I got a call from Joe and said, he left a message on my answering machine. This is how long ago it was, you guys. It was like 89. And said, "Jackie Sleight watched your class. Do you want to teach on my convention?"
Wow.
It. And that was it.
That's Jackie, you gave him this break. That's amazing. Wow. That's amazing.
It started my years-long convention career. So thank you, Jackie, for that. I don't know if I've ever thanked you in person for that, but that was that was it. Yeah.
Wow.
Coffee Talk is the perfect time for you to do that.
Yep, 100%.
There it is, everybody. So,
And I had no idea about that. So look at how connected it is as well.
For sure. And I remember when Joe and Jackie always used to teach this class on a Sunday on the convention that was focused on staging and musicality. And I used to go and sit back. I was 19, 20 years old, trying to take in everything I could, and would go into that class on a Sunday and listen to them talk about musicality and staging. I remember Jackie would always say, "I feel like when I watch your choreography, I'm counting eights. You need to mix up your, musicality and your phrasing." And to this day, I still remember that. Am I just doing eights, or am I finishing the phrase on a 2 or a 3? So I have to thank Jackie for that as well.
Isn't that interesting?
Absolutely. So there's
Jackie, is that something you remember as a critique in those days?
Actually, yes, I do remember that one. And as far as the convention goes, I don't know whether to say thank you or I'm sorry.
fair. Fair.
That doesn't have to be determined, Jackie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jackie, tell us a little bit about you. I know you started later and your story is awesome.
I did. Yeah, it's weird. I did start later. First, I have to say, I was so excited when you asked me to do this. And then I heard that Miss Debbie was doing it in Ray, and I thought, oh God. And then I got really nervous. No, it's true. It's true. Still, okay. Yeah, I didn't start dancing until I was 18.
Yeah.
And it was my last semester in high school. And we had an option of taking basketball or modern dance. And so I was going to do basketball, of course. And my friend said, oh, no, let's take dance. It's going to be easy. Okay. All right, let's do that. And it was not easy. But I still wasn't into it. I just thought, oh, okay, be a tree. I put my arms up. And that was kind of just there until a friend of mine who took that class had, I think I've told you this story, Ree, but it's like forever in my head. She had a leotard and tights on. And I went up to her and I said, what is this? Like, what is this? Because we had gym shorts. I said, what is this? And she goes, oh, this is what you wear when you really dance. Oh, so she finally talked me into going with her to watch her dance class. And thank heavens, it was when it was still a little teeny tiny studio, but it was at Dupre Dance Academy in Hollywood. And I went up and opened up a folding chair and sat there, and a fella named Joe Bennett was teaching the class. And if you know Joe, you know, like either you're going to love this or you run quickly. So, but I sat in the doorway watching this class, and for whatever reason, I just cried for an hour and a half. Like I had to figure out what they were doing. I had no idea what they were doing, but whether it was the movement or the music, it was all of that. And he was a genius with musicality. He was brilliant. So it was crazy. That's what I did. And then I graduated high school and I had gotten a scholarship to UCLA and I didn't go. I know. So I decided I'm going to junior college, and my parents wanted me to be a secretary. Okay, fine. Ring, because those were the typewriters. And that worked out for 2 months. Then I went.
That was it.
That was it. I went to a fella named Eugene Loring, who owned American School of Dance. He was a great choreographer. He choreographed the ballet Billy the Kid, the original. And I went there and I said, I don't have any money and I'll do anything. And it was a ballet school. So he let me wash the windows and sweep the floors and stuff. And I took, 3 ballet classes a day. And that's where I met Joe, because he was teaching there. So that was kind of, Wow. Yeah. And sometimes, because I didn't have any place to live. Yeah, I know this is weird. So I lived in my car, but never mind that. No, it's true. It was only 2 years. It was fine. I lived in my car, but Mr. Loring would let me sleep in the library couch sometimes. Yeah.
I love that, Jackie.
You know, like many lifetimes in this life. Can we just do that? Like that is wild. Now you're like weekends or conventions, and like I mean, it's wild.
Now I'm in a hotel. Same thing. Oh God!
It's called a gypsy, but now it's offensive, I think. Okay, so if I offended anybody, I'm sorry. But when we were growing up, that was what you were. If you were like Jackie,
if you were lucky.
Yeah, if you were lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is great. First, I never invited those that are watching to put comments in. We are getting them. But if you have any questions for our guests or memories, share them in the comments. So, Debbie D, take me to New York. Take me to New York when you were a young dancer. Who inspired you? Who were the teachers, choreographers in that time?
Well, I had a studio very, very young. Not something that I was planning on doing. I thought I was going to be a performer, and which I did do, but I opened up the studio more out of necessity. And I started going to New York and study. And I was about 17, 18, 19 years old. And I went to my first dance convention. And of course, I was in the tap class and they're going shuffle, ball change, full lap, ball change, full. And I'm going, what? Had no idea what they were saying, but I could close my eyes and go, oh, that's what they're doing. And I could mimic it because I always learned by sound. And then there was a man that came up to me after that convention. I had a couple of dancers with me, and he came up to me and he said, I'd like to meet your teacher. And I said, whose teacher? And he said, these young kids right here. And I said, oh, that would be me. And he says, no, honey. He says, I'd like to meet your teacher. I said, no, that would be me. And he says, well, do something. So I whipped out a couple of steps. You didn't have to ask me twice in those days. And he said, I'd like to work with you. And I said, well, who are you? And he says, well, my name is Henry Latang.
Oh,
And so Henry found me. And
Holy, that's an incredible story right there.
yep. And that same convention, a woman came up to me and said, you belong on the teaching platform. And I said, well, I don't know the name.
I don't call things by names.
And she says, well, you've got 1 year to learn. She says, here's your contract, and you'll be teaching at the Waldorf Astoria in DEA in 1 year. That woman was Grace Wakefield.
Who's still alive, who's still
She
with
is.
us
She
today.
lives 5 minutes from my house, and I spoke to her the other day. And so those two incredible people started my journey on the teaching platform. And Henry just took me under his wing, and I would fly in to New York on weekends. I would teach at his studio on Friday and Saturday, and then I would have privates with him all day Sunday. And we would just jam and work and work and work. And he taught me the value of a step. I always knew how to break it down, but he taught me the value of taking the most easy step on earth and being able to get an applause or a standing ovation with that step, because it was how you put it across. It wasn't about the step. It was about how you interpreted it. So it was amazing, so my life lessons started and continued right up until the time he passed.
Yeah, wow, cool.
wow.
Another man that was very influential for me, and this is going back because I met him when I was 9 years old, because he was from Rochester, New York, and his name was L. Gilbert. And L, his brother, they were tappers. All of his family were dancers, and they performed. And L, my uncle was painting Al Gilbert's brother's office. So there was a wood floor there, and he said, well, come over and just tap on the wood floor and practice. So I was, and so this man walks in, and he looked at me and he said, how old are you? And I said, 9. And he says, do this. And I started tapping, and he would teach me a step. And I said, well, and he says, well, I'm Elle Gilbert. And I said, well, hello, Mr. Gilbert. And he started teaching me. And he realized immediately who my teacher was. And he realized that I had only learned by sound. And that's how he started teaching me. And from that point on, he said to me, I can't wait to see where you go from here. And we remained best of friends. And what a legend he became to the teaching world.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this. I love it when someone brings up his name. And yes, he is somebody who was able to bring dance education in a new way to small towns and cities all over this country, and his techniques and all of that. But listen, now that he's gone, I want to say he was one of the kindest men I
for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so yes, all the other stuff is great. But Al Gilbert was a kind and passionate man.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yep.
I just loved him, and he was a mentor. He kept telling me, keep writing, as Beverly Fletcher did. Keep writing, keep doing videos, keep exposing your technique, because it complements our technique. It doesn't take away from the technique. It complements. We all can complement each other. You just have to be open for that.
Awesome. You brought up the name Beverly Fletcher. We could go in for an hour on that one. Just want to make sure I point out that name, because, wow, she was, Laura, you said my mother surrounded my brother and I, when I told you, with men.
Mm-hmm.
Beverly Fletcher was somebody my mother surrounded us with. And I have to tell you, the smartest, funnest, logical, I don't know, one of the best dance people on the planet at the time. Okay, Ray Leeper, tell me a little bit about the legends, the people from your early days that inspired you.
Yeah, gosh, for me, early days, it's it's so interesting. You don't realize until you look back, right? So I'd been dancing about 2 years, and I think I told you this, 1982, was at DMA Nationals. And I actually, for everybody out there listening, I actually watched Ree win Mr. Dance of America. In 1982.
I think I'm happy about that. I'm not sure I'm happy about that.
It was great.
You realize that was 42 years ago.
I do.
That really happened.
So,
it was a time,
he's counting.
Right. Ree's not.
Go ahead, Ray. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It was in Washington, D.C., and it was my first exposure. I was 12 years old, had been dancing for 2 years. We had gone to the Nationals in Washington, D.C., and it was my first exposure to East Coast dance and training. And I found myself very attracted to the aesthetic and the roots and technique, for sure. And there was a sophistication that I remember as a 12-year-old watching the work and taking from Gus Giordano. Was the very first time I ever took from Gus Giordano. And not knowing back then, and not growing up in a convention world, when I lived 1980, 1982, conventions weren't really a thing on the West Coast until Tremaine really broke out. There was Dance Olympus, but I didn't grow up going to conventions. So it was my first convention. It was DMA. And to be pulled up on the stage, with Gus Giordano, I wasn't even very good, you guys. I mean, I don't even know why he pulled me up, but he saw something. And I ended up taking from him quite a bit, and traveling and doing all of that. And even now, for me to be able to set work on the company, his daughter Nan is artistic director, and still the company's going strong. That was a really, really huge influence for me. And then also Sorry to keep going back to Jackie, but also a lot of the same principles and lines that I was learning from Jackie at the time later on. And connecting those dots for me was really what made me realize that there was a history in all of this. When you start seeing the through line in jazz, right? And the root of it was really, really eye-opening for me. And my moving to New York, I'm an LA kid, but I moved to New York when I was 22, 23 is probably 1993. The business in LA, this was post Janet, post Paul Abdul. Paul Abdul was happening, but the business, in LA, it was a lot of industrial work and that type of work, and it wasn't happening anymore in the early 90s. And so I picked up and moved to New York and started dancing in New York. And then I really, really got a really great grasp and exposure to the East Coast. And it felt like full circle to me, which I really, really loved. And I really only danced in shows and professionally as a means to be able to choreograph and teach. I was just gathering information because I was just chomping at the bit to be able to choreograph and to teach even more and to teach at Broadway Dance Center. And then finally, I think I was 26 is when I first started teaching at Broadway Dance Center and then had my stint there. But I always consider myself an observer. I love to watch class. And I love to be a student and try to figure out what it is about the work and what it is about the teaching that makes it great. Yeah. And really analyzing what makes people great and why they're popular, why they have such a huge audience, and figuring that out and taking the bits and pieces from everybody. I keep referring to Jackie, but those little nuggets of information about musicality and staging and editing choreography, editing your work. And there's so many, too many to mention, but I think that, the takeaways that I'm getting I've gotten from so many great instructors. And I think that a lot of choreography is very, very successful because these creators are able to communicate what it is that they want. And that's going way back to my very first dance teacher, Carol, who was really wonderful at that. So it's all these things. Yeah. I just kind of, have in my arsenal from watching and observing.
And I love to hear that, Ray, because I feel like I always hear this quote and it like irritates me, is like those who can't teach. And I'm like, teaching is its own craft. I got so much, I know you guys were listening earlier, when I was injured and I had to watch my professor teach when I was in college. It was a Graham technique class. And watching him describe and break it down and and we all know as teachers, you can't just say kick, ball, change. You have to say 5 different ways to reach the 8 kids that are in the class, right? And then you amplify that when you're teaching adults and there's 30 in the class or 50 in the class or a convention floor. That quote of those who can't teach, it's like teaching is such its own craft. It's something that, like you're saying, it takes so much time to develop, and taking from different teachers and observing and taking that nugget from that class and that person. Like, it is not everyone there's different hats you can wear in the dance world. You can be a dancer, you can be a choreographer, you can be a teacher. Doesn't mean you can be great at all 3. Like to me, I think they're all separate hats that you can wear. And I was like you, I went to college for dance, and my professors in Philadelphia, my professor said, go to New York, you'll make it. And I just said, I want to own a dance studio. Like, that was like in my heart. I knew I've always known that. And I danced professionally in Philly for like 4 or 5 different companies all the way through I was 30. But I always knew that I wanted to put myself in a position financially where I could open up a studio, and that's going to be my legacy. So to me, hearing you say the work that puts into creating a good teacher, I feel like that's so important for our parents to hear, for our youth to hear. It doesn't just happen because you dance professionally. It is a completely different hat and a different bucket you have to fill in order to get into that classroom and give those students what they deserve. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think all 3 things that you said, there's gratification in 3 different ways, right? And for me, as a dancer, as a choreographer, as a teacher, I get more gratification from teaching than any of the 3.
Yeah.
I don't care what I've choreographed. I don't care what I've seen on TV, whatever it is. There's a certain gratification there, but there's nothing better for me than teaching an amazing, inspiring class.
Yeah.
Period. It's like going to church, and it's spiritual. It
Yeah.
encompasses all three of the things. You are dancing, you are offering choreography, but you're teaching. And that is to me is where I get the most gratification, for sure.
I second that.
Reese wants to
I
say.
I got things going on in the brain, and I have to do stuff like that to keep what it is in the brain so it doesn't go away. What you just said is so important. Teacher, choreographer, whatever your passion is, it's about being you. It's about your experiences that you're putting out into the world. It's a uniqueness that every dancer or artist has. You have to dig deep inside and use that rather than look around and try to be like others who had a whole different journey along the way that you're never going to understand.
Right. Well, it's kind of what Debbie said before. When I watch other people's work, trying to dissect what it is that makes it great, it goes to your point, Ree, that it's what they're bringing of themselves to the work. So you can watch work and think to yourself, well, gosh, it's good. Why is something that's so basic or that appears to be easy to do bringing so much energy and joy, right? Because it's not necessarily complex. It's not necessarily really, really deep all the time, but there's something coming through, right? It's like Debbie said, it's how you present the work. So for me, if I'm choreographing, I think if I'm coming from a place that's more myself and more genuine, it's going to translate better. And that's what makes you who you are. You can't explain it. There's no explaining it. It's not being derivative, right? If you're too derivative, then it's not authentic, I guess, is the easy answer.
I thought that was a pretty good way to put it, my friend.
Yeah.
Jackie Sleight, the legends that you think about. I right away you said, Tremaine, and who's the other convention that's still going?
Dupre's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those people and others that we may not know, tell us a little bit about what you remember, my friend.
Well, classes were different when, 100 years ago, they were different. They were definitely, I don't know how to put it, but other people would understand. It was a thing. Like, you get this or I don't know. We're a lot nicer now.
You think so?
Trying to get our point across takes a little.
That was a good way to put it.
Wasn't it? So it was different, and it's almost like you had to pay the price in order to move to the next whatever it was. So
I'm bringing you up because I have a feeling we're all with you still. Just go ahead.
You have a feeling what?
This is going to be great words. Go.
Oh, I'm scared.
And you look small on the screen.
I do, because I told you I had to find my iPad. My computer didn't want to work.
You're fine.
I'm scooting in. No, I just got so many no's from the teachers. So many. And I wasn't the best dancer. And I knew that. Now I'm much better than I used to be. But I had insane luck because I've got in front of people who were legends in their own right. I mean, Roland Dupre, he really established West Coast jazz. Yeah. And he was tough, man. He was tough. He would take his class and do 2 counts of 8. And that was it. And when you left, though, man, you had those 2 counts of 8 because he had yelled at you 35 times directly. So he was, I don't know if I've told you the story. I'm going to try to condense it. He had started a jazz company, the Los Angeles Jazz Company, in 1978. And I had worked my way up the ladder and I was assisting him. And we gave the audition. Everybody in town was there. The girl who was always in the front and the middle when I was in class, she was in there, and I thought, hey man, this is, I'm up here with my notepad. Let's go. I'm so cool. And we started the audition, and Roland goes to me. He turns to me and he goes, we're starting. I said, yes. He goes, no, we're starting. I said, yes. And he looked at me and goes, go on the floor. We're starting. So he made me go onto the floor and audition. And we did ballet first, and then he cut me. And I had to go back to the front room and pick up my notepad and do the rest of the audition. And I had to assist him for the next 3 months before the concert. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And later on, he hired me for this really cool job. And I broke down. Why did you do that to me? Ah. And he said, because I was really, like, today they would say, full of yourself. Like, I really had an ego in that moment. And he goes, nah, you can't do that. I'll never forget it. And that is the first thing I notice about people, you know? So I was super lucky. And Joe Tremaine, who I always say, I mention him every single week on convention because I owe him everything, you know? And he used to let me clean his apartment to pay for my classes. And I didn't do a very good job. So that was really a favor. And yeah, for sure. And he was tough, man. He was tough on me. I assisted him too. And I used to sit out front and write people's name down, take their $3 and stick it in his jazz dance bag. And $3. And that was that, but he never gave me anything. Like he didn't put me in the front. He didn't give me compliments. He didn't do anything till after the fact. And it was kind of crazy. So those two were, I had a ballet teacher, Sally Whalen, and she was just beyond brilliant, just amazing. And she used to call me her snackerina. Apparently, I wasn't the shape she really wanted. So she called me a snackerina, psychological damage. But that's okay, because I got it, what she was trying to say. It was different. But I'm so grateful, because if I hadn't had that, I certainly wouldn't be here. And if young dancers could understand that the hard work and the journey, those are the best stories. I don't have stories like that now, you know, like my life's pretty even Steven. But then those are the stories. And that's the part that goes into your soul when you are fighting for anything to get this much better, when you're fighting just not to look bad. And then you pretend you're okay and you leave, and then you go home and you cry because you were awful. Those are the best. I know that's weird, but for whatever reason, it's this inside thing that you can't teach. You can't teach.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Okay.
And can I add to that, Jackie, when you see that, you're on the teacher side and you like see it in a kid.
And it's that fast. I will look at a kid and go, that's it. Yep. That's it. And they can't do 2 steps. And I'm
right. And right. Sometimes it's that. Exactly. I have over my, 20 years of teaching, some of the ones, that third line kid, it's like, as soon as you get that shuffle ball change, like, it's like that feeling inside of me. I'm like, it took me a year, but you did it. Thank you. It's like, oh, you go, girl,
Yep.
But then, don't you know, like, she did it with the biggest smile on her face every single day. Like, I know she wanted home, and she practiced, and her mom took videos so she could practice showing her how to do, and it's just like, once they get it, it's like, oh, but you're saying though, it's like, you see those kids who have that like fire in them. And it's interesting because sometimes it's not always the best ones.
No, it's not.
It's the ones that have to fight for it. And It's interesting.
I used to open my, I'm going to stop. I used to open my
Go.
bedroom door because I had a long mirror in the closet door. And I would dance in front of the mirror with the closet, just the door in my room with the door closed. And I was showing off big time, like, dun, dun, dun. But in class, and I think, come on, why can't you do that? And it took forever. But maybe I did here. But, but when I got home, God. Ugh.
Yeah, Jackie, you're taking me back because I think I might have blocked some of it out.
Again, I'm sorry.
It's coming back to you,
funny
right?
that you say that because I'm quietly thinking about 30, 40 years ago, some of the things the teachers said and did. Does anybody know New York? She ran American Dance Machine.
Lee Theodore?
Yes.
Lee Theodore.
She would teach, her class was something else. She teach like 20s on Monday, 30s on Tuesday. It was a musical theater. One cigarette after the other. One would be burning in the ashtray while she was smoking one, fixing your body while you were standing at the bar.
While she was teaching, Ree?
Yes.
No question.
Oh my God.
Do you remember Betsy Haig?
Oh, I called her Hog. Is it Haig?
Well,
I didn't mean that with disrespect.
the cigarettes were going in those classes too. I studied with her.
Yeah, there were other
David DeMarie
smells.
and I were in class together all the time. We loved her, but boy, nobody could do her but her.
That is the truth.
Isn't that true?
There were other smells that weren't cigarettes going on in her studio because my mother had to explain what the smell was.
No wonder we left class really happy.
Hey.
And then wanted a
Oh
snack
my
after.
God.
That's why you wanted a snack after class.
Oh, we could go on like this
We
all
could
day
go on.
long. This is, but wait, for our viewers, it's not about the greatness of dance. It's the impact these people make. It's the memories you make. Someone said it earlier about the journey. When you get a little bit older, you'll start to look back and you're going to start smiling about the journey, but it isn't going to be all the things that you thought were successes.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's going to be the interactions you've had along the way with people that stick with you.
Yeah. This is crazy. This is a minor thing that I did, and this person reminded me of it a couple weeks ago. So apparently, at one point, I was really mad, and I said to this guy, "You are out of here." And he picked up his bag and stormed to the door, and he stepped out like he was going to go out the door. I said, "You leave this room, and you're never coming back." Okay. And he just got stuck in the door because what do you want me to do? Leave, don't leave, leave, don't leave. And I said, I said, you sit down right there in that door. You sit down. And then I made him sit there the rest of the class.
I mean, when I was coming through, people were getting kicked out of class right, left, and center. You guys,
yes.
it was like,
Yep.
And I remember Joe Tremaine, this girl was going, I can't even say it. I would get canceled if I told you what Joe said, but
I know that's it.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
Yep.
And it was horrifying. I remember I used to show up to class in LA and just I would have a pit in my stomach, just oh my God. And Doug Caldwell called me out one time. He's like, "Are you going to dance in the back of my class for the rest of your life?" I was like, "I'm not going there." Kidding me? Absolutely not.
Can I say something that you just, Ray, you said earlier that I thought about? Do you know I too had the chance to dance with Gus? Lots of conventions all over the place. My fear was that he would ask me to go on stage because every time he did, I forgot the combination. If he left me alone on the floor doing my thing, I'd be just fine. When he put me up there, I can't explain it. Other people, I could do their combination. Being up there on the stage doing his combination, be like, oh, I can't remember.
Yeah. I don't, I think that if I knew who Gus was the first time it happened, it would have been a different story for sure. But I was so young, I didn't know who Gus was. I didn't know what was happening until years later, you know?
That was good. That was good.
You know, otherwise it'd be a more traumatic story.
I had the pleasure of teaching and being on faculty with him for years, and we would travel together. And I remember him, he could spend 25, 30 minutes just on a jazz hand.
Yeah.
And he would get frustrated. I remember him coming up to me at one time and he goes, they're not getting it. And they were just not getting the energy he wanted in that jazz hand. And I think back even now, some of the hoofers or the tap legends that I remember watching some of their classes, Henry's in particular, and he was teaching and he said, they're not getting the flap. He said, it's not just a brush step. It's so much more. He said, but they don't understand it. So we're so connected in all of the art forms are so connected in their theory and the intricacies of what we're trying to put across. And it's knowing how to put that across. That's what makes a teacher. And like Laura said earlier, it could take 5 or 6 different ways, whatever it is. I had a little girl. She was in my class. She had never learned a buffalo. And I gave them an assignment to come back and teach and make up a step. And so she came in the studio and she did a buffalo. And I knew she had never learned it before. She might have seen it. And I said, that is fabulous. I said, did you make that up? And she said, yes. And I said, well, let's call it a buffalo. And she looked at me, she goes, Miss Debbie, why? And I said, because doesn't it look like one? And I said, we'll call it your buffalo. And I put her name in front of the buffalo. And then she was happy. Of course, about a year later, she realized the step existed. But I didn't want to bust her bubble. What I wanted to do was encourage the love that she had. And she was so proud of her little buffalo.
Yeah.
And like Laura said, it was a matter of us taking, as teachers, I started so young. I didn't know how to break down a step. Nobody ever taught me how to.
Right.
I started teaching the blind and the deaf. And I had to learn how to break down something to the most minute level. And once I was able to do that, I was able to get more out of my regular students. So yes, I was teaching them, but boy, did they teach me how to teach. So it's all of these little things, like you said, Ree, going back in your life and seeing all of those little gemstones, whether good or bad, that are a part of your journey. It's amazing when you do start looking back.
I frankly am a little upset at how many years I'm now looking back. I wish it was a little bit less.
I hear you.
There's certain dates that pop up. I'm not going to name any, but they pop up and I say, oh, that was just about 20 years ago.
Yeah,
and
no.
It wasn't. It wasn't. Okay, you guys. I want to just say one more time, thank you for being with us. This was awesome. We need to do it more often. And know that you guys are doing with the current generation and have been doing it, what these people we talked about did prior to that. And I appreciate having all 3 of you on same call at the same time. This man is honored.
Yes.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
Yes. This was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on today, you guys.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Laura. Good to see you, Ray.
Good to
Jackie.
see you all.
Nice to see you.
See you in a couple weeks. Another inspiring coffee talk, and I have a feeling we might repeat this one day soon too. Take care, everybody. Thank you, guests. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agree.